Say hi, Stella girl. You say hi. Say good morning.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, oh, that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, oh, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see.
Welcome to Built on Faith Homestead, or Leaving Egypt, depending on which video platform you're watching this on. My name is Justin. I live with my wife Melissa, and we have 3 kids. We live in a tiny house, and we just do the best we can to serve the Lord and live a self-sustainable life, and we have a lot of work to do on both of those. There's no doubt about that. This morning, I'm getting around a little slow. I've been hurting real bad the last few days, and I had decided I was going to take a good hot shower before I even tried to start the day. So we're running a little late. But after that good hot shower, I was scrolling through some news articles, and I found this one about this Canadian dairy having to dump milk because they had reached their monthly quota. As you can see in the article here, says there's no such thing as a surplus of milk in Canada. Once you hit the quota as a dairy farmer, you must dump the milk. And I'll show you the video clip of this guy in just a moment. And most of you guys maybe have seen it on, I think it's called Twitter. I don't have that stuff. YouTube and Facebook's about as wild as I'm willing to go. But I watched his video, read the article, and we're dealing with a wild critter here. And it is pretty crazy to think about, having to dump that milk, not even being able to use it for anything else. It's kind of crazy to consider.
We're here at Goverment Farm in southern Ontario. We milk about 260 cows. Right now during the winter months, you milk quite a bit more milk because the feed is very consistent. And as you do a good job, you will produce quite a bit of milk. So, but right now we're over our quota. It's regulated by the government and by the DFO. But the problem is what they don't understand. Millions of people look at this milk running away because it's the end of the month. So I have to dump 30,000 liters of milk. It breaks my heart. I will show you. By the way, this here Canadian milk, it's $7 a liter. When I go for my haircut, people say, wow, $7, Jerry, for a little bit of milk. I say, well, you have to go higher up because we have no say anymore as a dairy farmer on our own farm because they make us dump it.
Now what you're going to see is me moving around a lot because Stella is halter broke and we don't have a stanchion to milk her in. So we just kind of got to do what we got to do, which means she can walk a half circle if she wants to, and she usually does while I milk her. Easy, easy, easy. Now I must admit, this is the first time I've tried to film while doing this. And Stella does not like this camera thing for some reason. It's really making her jumpy this morning. So after reading that article about having to dump all that milk, I thought about our own situation. And now we're a lot different. We just got one old family milk cow right now, and I'd like to get another one these days soon. But we're never going to be a commercial dairy, right? Like that's not in our plans unless the Lord tells us to do something like that. But here this guy's this commercial dairy having to dump all that milk because he had reached his quota, and I thought about that. And you know, I'd never had a milk cow growing up. We just got one as a family milk cow from my wife and family just to start trying to produce our own milk and be more self-sufficient. And it also provided some good full-fat milk for our middle kid because Leah, we've had a lot of trouble keeping weight on her. And so this would help. She doesn't She likes to eat, but she mostly just likes like meat and milk, right? And so this has helped. She's gained a couple pounds just since we got this milk. And so I put that in my own situation for just a little bit. And I thought about how heartbreaking that would be if somebody ever came by and said, look, Justin, I know you guys got a family milk cow, and I know you're providing your own milk. And I know you're giving milk to some of your family members and friends and those kinds of things maybe. And maybe you're trying to help some folks out. And that's great. But we actually don't allow that. That's not legal anymore. And so you're going to have to just dump that milk down the drain. How heartbreaking and aggravating that would be. On the other side, whenever you know how expensive groceries are and food is, why not be able to do something with that milk, right? Be able to give it to a church or a homeless shelter, something to actually help the people out with how crazy expensive everything is, right? I believe we are, once again, looking at biblical prophecy, if you will, in place. Now, to be frank and to be honest, you're not going to find anything in biblical prophecy that says, and they shall dump the milk of your dairy farms, right? But what you will see is famines all across the world. And because of supply and demand issues, prices will be extremely high. And you say, well, the supply was there and the demand's there, but they were forced to dump it. Exactly, making the supply and demand issue a thing at the storefront whenever you go to buy groceries. We are in a broken food supply chain, in a broken supply chain and food industry system. It is just broken, and there's no doubt about that. It needs fixed. I don't know if it'll get fixed. I'm not so sure. It won't just take the Lord coming back for everything to get fixed up. But there is no doubt, hearing this guy and then reading about the laws in Canada, that would be heartbreaking. And my heart goes out to that fella. I can't imagine having to dump that milk. I also can't imagine people that are watching this video, and because we have been there a lot of times, when you were struggling so hard to get by that, like, even just buying 1 gallon of milk is tough. When you go to the grocery store and what little bit of money you got in your pocket's all you got to spend on the groceries, and you got to decide whether or not you're going to buy that gallon of milk or you're going to buy that bigger package of ramen noodles just to get through the week, right? Like, we've been there, and I understand that. And so that's very heartbreaking to see from a lot of perspectives, right? From milking, from the perspective of being broke and knowing how hard it is to put groceries on the table, from the perspective of wastefulness, right? Just the pure wastefulness that causes. I know us, right? We have a couple family members we try to keep in milk because she obviously produces more milk than what we're going to drink. And then we try to make our own, like, butter, and we've been working on cottage cheese and cream cheese and farmer's cheese, and Melissa wants to learn how to make, like, cheddar cheese and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, it's all a work in progress, and we hope to get a second cow, mostly to always keep us in milk for when this one has to have a baby and all those kinds of things, or if she ever gets sick or whatever. That way we're always in milk. Then we had thought, well, we'll probably try to sell the raw milk, the extra milk that we have, to help supplement the feed bill and all that kind of stuff. Because as you know, hay and feed's not free, right? That all costs money. And I can't imagine just having to dump all of that excess down the drain, right? If nothing else, we'll let it clabber and feed it to our chickens, right? Or if you had any sort of other livestock you could feed it to, that'd be great, right? I've even made Sylvie, our dog, we just give her dry dog food. And if we had some milk, our fridge went out, right? Remember that, guys? And we had to get a new refrigerator. And a bunch of our milk soured that was in the fridge. They say it's actually fine for raw milk, but we couldn't get it past her nose. And so I actually dumped a bunch over into Sylvie's dog bowls, and she had cereal for a couple of days, right? And she was all about it. You could always find uses for it, right? But man, having to dump it at a commercial dairy down the drain is just heartbreaking. I am not against commercial farms whether it be dairy farms or beef cattle farms or whatever. I'm not against them whatsoever. However, I do think we'd be much wiser as a country and as a people if more of us would begin to get the family milk cows again and begin to call our friends and our family members over to butcher animals together and work together on those sort of things, and maybe sell a little bit of. This is just kind of my thoughts, and we'll just get them out there. And I'm thinking out loud here, right? But for somebody that's just got a couple of dairy cows, if you're selling the raw milk for $5 a gallon, you're keeping a lot more of that money than a commercial dairy. Now, granted, you're selling a lot less milk, right? And I understand that. But then when you consider, maybe you're selling direct your beef. Now, I know you can't in the United States. It's got to be USDA inspected and all that. I understand all that, right? But maybe you take it to the butcher and then you sell that beef to your neighbors roundabouts. Or maybe you and your neighbors get together and split a cow and butcher it yourselves, right? You can do that. That's allowable. Growing gardens and selling produce in your community, right? And trading produce and all of that. You understand how much that fixes? It don't only fix price issues, right? As far as grocery store prices or whatever. But what it does is it builds community between your neighbors and your family and all those kinds of things. It's more profitable for both individuals, whether you're buying it or whether you're raising it and selling it. It's still more profitable. It's better food, it's healthier food, and it's not dependent on the supply chain. It just seems like if we would go backwards in time and begin to produce some of this stuff locally, we'd be a lot better off as a nation and as a people. And then when you think about it this way, once again, not against commercial outfits, not against them at all. The commercial outfits providing commercially dairy and meats and those kinds of things. You take people that can't, right? Maybe whatever, something's wrong, they're homebound, they live in an apartment type setting, something like that, where they cannot help grow produce or nothing like that. They have to buy it at the grocery store, let's say. It's going to drive that price down because of supply and demand issues, right? Because if locally people are doing all that they can to grow and produce and all that, then it's going to drive the supply up, actually, at the grocery store, lowering the demand and lowering the prices on the grocery store stuff. So it kind of helps everybody. Now, is that really going to happen? Absolutely not, for a lot of reasons. Regulations, governmental regulations would be one of them. Another one of them is, quite honestly and quite truthfully, we're lazy people. And we don't want to get out and do the work that it takes to milk or to grow gardens or to raise up beef animals the right way and all that kind of stuff, right? A lot of times we just don't want to put in the work. But could you imagine if we did? Could you imagine how much better things would be, how much better the food would be? And once again, not so dependent on the supply chain. And if you think much about, like yesterday, the Chinese spy balloon and what that could have been and what it may have been and all of that, right? Like if that's an EMP, and they detonate that thing, and it cripples you understand how EMPs work. It basically fries the electrical system. Could you imagine everything being shut down that hard? No going to the grocery store. What are you going to do with it once you get there anyhow? Cars don't work. Phones don't work. None of that works. But what if you have developed a relationship with your community right about you, and you guys can all work together then to begin to help you guys sustain in that moment of crisis, in that moment of time? It just seems like it makes way more sense to me to begin to develop that some way, somehow, even if it is the smallest form, right? Even if it's just like, I've got extra cucumbers and I'm going to go give them to my neighbor today. I've got extra milk. I'm just going to go give my neighbor a gallon of milk, right? Whatever it is, just to begin to build that, because like those days are going to come. It's going to happen. We know it from the secular world, and most of all, we know it because the Bible teaches it. And knowing that those days are going to come, it just seems like we would be better off learning from one another and working together. There's no doubt about that. Well, I believe I'm done rambling. Just the ramblings of a red-bearded preaching hillbilly that likes to milk a cow and eat fresh eggs. Just an old college dropout that actually enjoys splitting firewood with a splitting maul. We'll catch you guys on the next video. Get this camera out of the way. Stella, that's about as jumpy as I've seen her. She did not like, maybe it's the fuzzy microphone on top, I don't know. She didn't like you guys at all watching. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch you next time.